I went to Afghanistan in 2009, and I thought I went because I was supposed to make a film. Someone gave me some money to go make a film about girls going to school in Afghanistan. And I knew I didn't really want to make a film about that, so I was trying to figure out what I was going to make a film about, which is often the case, right? Like you have some reason that you have to do it, like an assignment, or you have someone who has given you money to do something, or you just don't understand anything about anything yet, so you don't really know what you're doing, or you haven't really thought about why you're making a movie in the first place, but suddenly you find yourself in a place with a camera, and you're beginning to search. So I was searching for this movie. I worked on it. I went away. I came back. And when I came back to Kabul, there was something new in the sky. And so it had nothing to do with the movie that I was making, but I began filming it. So this film is about 8 minutes long. But just so you know, I had no idea I was making this film when I was shooting this footage. Does that make sense? I thought I was making something completely different.
can see the whole Kabul.
Qui? Buon dia.
La palla è pirotato.
Ciao, ya acaba de estar así,
Puro baka dengan izan istak betul. Lihat Musa.
خداوند مالک همه چیز است، همه دنیا را دیده میتونه. خداوند کل دنیا را زمین و آسمان، زیر زمین تا و بالا کل را خداوند دیده میتونه. همه چیز پیدا کننده خداوند همه چیز پیدا کرده، از همه دانا و بیناست، از همه چیز با خبره. امیر کی پیدا کرده؟ امیر هم خداوند پیدا کرده که ایره آسمان او آدم بالا کرده. او خود از پیدا نتونست او آدم، امیر خداوند برش عقل داده، فکر داده، امور پیدا کرده که در آسمان او آدم بالا کرده.
What's fascinating to me is that I knew as soon as I saw the blimp that I must film it, right? Because it's just so extraordinary visually, right? And I had no idea so I'm an American citizen, right? And I go to Kabul. I had no idea we had surveillance blimps in the air filming people. It was not reported at the time. And I was doing some filming at the US Embassy, and I said, what is that? And they said, oh, it's classified. You're not allowed to film it. So of course. And you know, I had this like fantasy of like, oh, it has cameras and it can see me. And so at some point I was like, I really want to see the footage of me filming it, because it really was like a mirror, right? You know, it's this thing looking back at me. And in some ways, like a total mirror of me, like a big white thing in a foreign place, right? Like, so I just wanted to show you, this camera is like about this big. And I brought this camera to Afghanistan because at the time, it was a high-definition camera, and it was what I could afford, and it was small and inobtrusive and felt like it wouldn't draw a lot of attention to me. But I shot some pretty epic shots with a camera this big. The screen was this big. A lot of times I couldn't even see the blimp in the shot, but I knew it was there, right? So it became this really interesting thing around like, how do I frame this thing? So some of the first shots that I shot were like that, right? Or like a that. But then I was like, wow, where is this thing? Because I could literally see it from everywhere in the city. And so I said to someone, what's the highest point in Kabul? Can you take me there? So I went on a hike, right? And I, for the first time, saw that view of Kabul, right? I'd never seen it from that perspective before. I never would have gone to that place unless I wasn't being pulled by the blimp. So this is what happens when we, you know, write stories, make films. You know, you just have your curiosity that belongs to you that you can't even explain what it is. And then it will lead you places that you did not expect to go. So, for example, once I got up there, then I realized there was this extraordinary rock wall, right, that was there. And suddenly, I got up there away from the crash and the crowd of Kabul, and for the first time being in Kabul, I didn't feel fear anymore. And I felt this idea of being above it all, and I felt peaceful, right? And one of the things that happens to me when I am in a Muslim country and I hear the call to prayer is that I feel intense nostalgia for my childhood. It is not because I am Muslim, but it is because I really believed in God when I was a kid. And something about hearing the sound of the call to prayer, the way it like comes into my body, it reminds me of really believing. And I also feel very watched. Because when I was a kid, there was a Bible verse that said, God knows your thoughts before you think them. Which I don't know if anyone can imagine what it is to be a child and believe that God knows your thoughts. Maybe, are there some people in this room who know that feeling? Maybe, right? And I used to try to beat God to my own thoughts. I thought I would always be like, there's somewhere God can't know what I'm thinking. Which, of course, in many ways is why I'm interested in the theme of surveillance, right? Because I felt surveilled as a child in my own mind. So it was very sweet. My father, who's a psychiatrist, he saw this film. He was like, this is the most autobiographical film you've ever made, right? And I do not say that explicitly in this film, but I connect certain things because they are coming from me, right? So the idea of this, I'm feeling inside of me, And then I wanted to know, what do people think about the blimp? So I'm asking people. Some people say, oh, the blimp can see through burqas. The blimp can see underground. So then when I see these men who are burying someone, I think about that idea. The blimp can see underground. And I keep asking people. And then I run into this man who says, God created the brain of the person who created the blimp who can see everything. And I'm like, ugh. He is expressing my thoughts, but he is also expressing his thoughts. And our Venn diagram is not Jacques Tati, but we both understand what it is to believe in an omniscient God. He believes in a different omniscient God. I no longer believe in an omniscient God, but we share that understanding, right? Even though, in that moment, he's looking at me like, who are you, crazy lady, right? He thinks I make no sense in his world, but he's very happy to tell anyone the good news about God. So he wants to share with me. So that was one piece, right, of the project. Like, I was just thinking about these thoughts. What in the world was I doing when I filmed the balloons? Remember what I'm telling you about being a body in space? Like, what did I do to get this shot? I literally walked into a bunch of balloons, right? I'm literally inside the bunch of balloons. So why did I do that? I actually made that shot before I had any idea I was making the film about the surveillance blimp. I'm a person who loves color. Kabul is one of the most monochrome places I have ever been. I literally couldn't stand it that I was so color deprived inside of my camera. Everything I was filming was tan. And I couldn't take it. And I saw this kid across the street who had a bunch of balloons. So I got a wide shot of him, and the balloons are in the shot. And literally, as if drawn to candy, I went across the street and said hi and tried to talk to him. And, it's like, I'm this big American lady with a camera, and he's just like, wah! But I'm trying, I can't speak his language. We're joking with each other. He's like, do you want to buy a balloon? And he pulls a balloon towards me, and it comes in front of my vision. And I have orange. I'm like, oh, that feels good. And suddenly I realize I can do that with my camera. So I sort of say to him, no, and then I literally follow the string up and go into his balloons. And I'm lost inside of there. And the kid was just like, what are you doing, lady? But he was laughing, right? And turns out he had a sense of humor, too. Craziest thing that's ever happened to him, right? And it was fun. And once I was in there, I was like, I love this shot. I'm going to stay in this land of color. Whoa. And then because I'm a filmmaker, I think about shots, right? So back to Joe's moment, right? I have a beginning, which is his hand going up into the balloons. I have the me trapped in the balloons. And then I realize, he's going to walk away, and those two things can cut together, right? So I changed my position. So you're always thinking about cinema language, right? It's got a language. You're thinking about how things can cut together, and part of it is changing your position, going around something in 360 degrees, right? So what could you do right now? You could do that, or you could just pick this up and go over there, right? So she's going to try to do an impossible thing, which is turn around and film me at this crazy angle, and I'm too close to the camera. you've got to move, right? She's got to move. Boom. I moved, you move. You got to just pick that up, just take it away, right? So we get really attached to where, like, I'm trying to do something in the right way. I'm here. This is where I'm supposed to be when I'm filming a masterclass. Turns out I'm different, right? So suddenly she's learned something about me. It could be you decide, like, I'm going off tripod now because this woman will never stay still. But you might also know if I go off tripod, I have really poor handheld skills, and I'll have to be really close to her the entire time, and maybe she won't like that. So you're making a decision in your mind. What's my cinema language? Do I stay on sticks? Do I cut and run and go handheld now? And you're trying to respond to the situation. But the situation is changing. And you're making a calculation about the future. How is this going to cut together? So all of those things are going on in your mind, right? So me with the balloons, I just did that. And then when I learned that the blimp was tethered, I was like, oh, that's so cool. It's like a balloon just in the sky. And then another day, I saw a balloon stuck in a tree, that green balloon at the end stuck in a tree. I probably would have shot that shot anyway because it made me think of the red balloon, right? Because we have shared, some of us have seen it, some of us haven't, but we have a shared history of moving images. Look at this world that's in front of me, right? Like, incredible, these blown out giant government buildings of Kabul, these incredible big mountains. And one of the things that I think about when I film is get as far away from something as possible and get as close to something as possible. Get as far above something as possible, and now we have drones to do this for us, right? Or get up under it. But imagine, don't even just imagine 3 dimensions. Imagine 4 dimensions. Imagine 11 dimensions. How many of you are aware of quantum physics? Right? A little bit? So there's crazy ideas in quantum physics that we basically don't understand our universe in any kind of way. We don't know how many dimensions there are. And there's a principle called entanglement. Some of you saw this in Camera Person last night, right? There's a physicist who talks about entanglement. So entanglement is crazy, and this has been proven. I'm not just a crazy person, even though it seems crazy. You can take 2 little photons, and they might be spinning together, and what scientists can do is separate those 2 photons at vast distances, and they start spinning one in the opposite direction instantaneously, faster than the speed of light. That photon will change directions. They don't understand how it works. So I think about this all the time. So, we know in the universe, like a huge percentage of the universe is dark matter. It's basically, we know it's there, we don't know what its dimensions are. I think about this in filming all the time. Somehow we are recording the unknown. And maybe in the future, it will come together in a way that we don't expect. So this is my sort of leap of faith when I film. I don't know why, I don't know what possessed me, but what possessed me was going further and further of like, anywhere I am, I can see the blimp. So I collected all these shots. The movie I was making fell apart. And I just, in the back of my mind, was like, oh, I love those shots. And then one day, I was reading the paper in the United States, and I hear they put up a blimp in Maryland. And literally, like the next day, I got in my car, and drove to Maryland and looked for the blimp. And suddenly, I was like, I have a movie, right? And I shot for an afternoon in Maryland and waited for that flag to blow in front of the blimp, like an hour, right? And then I worked with a researcher to learn everything I could about the blimp. And I found that statement. Keep the balloon in the air. Doesn't matter whether it's the camera or not. Everyone thinks they're being watched. And I was like, boom, right? And I had a movie. I was so pleased when I made this shot. How satisfying is that? Right? That's really satisfying on an aesthetic level, right? And you know what that was? Remember what I showed you in the very beginning? It was a this. I moved that much with my teeny tiny little camera. I moved that much. And it made this happen. It made the whole image activate as a graphic image, as something that says like, you don't even know what that says to you, right? Like it's abstraction, but it is, you see intention. You know that I, who created this image, I'm doing something. You don't know what I'm doing, but you know I'm doing it with purpose, with intention. Now, if I had moved a tiny bit this way, his head would have been in the mountain, and it would have been, but maybe that would have made a cool shape too. And maybe I shot that shot too, where his head became the mountain. That's another way to do that, and that's a moving like this. So this is, for me, one of the great joys of camera work and not being bored, right? That suddenly, in moving this tiny inch, wow, I please myself, I thrill myself. I didn't see that relationship. Now I see it.